Okay, is there a question and you can type in a number that you'd want me to go over? That you're not sure of, or you don't remember, or you weren't here? Number 4. I would say there are 4 shifters of the production possibilities curve. I just asked you for 2. One would be change in quantity or quality of resources. The second would be technology. The third would be change in human resources. And when we say change in human resources, we're usually talking about training, like education, anything that are making like people better. And then the fourth would be capital stock. And capital stock would be building up of factories, machines, and all of those. And those are the only 4 things that would shift the production possibilities curve. And we're going to look at the production possibilities curve again, just as a quick review in a second. Okay, so change in quantity, quality of resources, change in technology, change in human capital, change in capital stock. Anything else anyone would want me to go over? Sure. All right, explain how you use the concept of opportunity cost in everyday life. You decided to come to the review instead of sleeping in or instead of going to work. Increasing opportunity cost, that would be a bowed out curve, which would be like that. And increasing opportunity cost occurs because resources are not easily adaptable. A constant opportunity would be a straight line for the opportunity, and that's because resources are easily adaptable. Explain why the law of increasing opportunity cost occurs. I said that's because resources are not easily adaptable. We talked about the shifters. If there was new technology, rather human resources increase, that would affect both pizza and robots. So the production possibilities curve would shift out. And you could say, if there was technology that improved robots, the production possibilities curve would only shift out for the robots. Absolute advantage is who can make the most output or use the least amount of inputs. So if it's 2 countries, the United States and Japan, who can make the most cars or who could use the least labor to make the cars? And comparative advantage is who has the lowest opportunity cost in making that. And we'll go over those. We touched briefly, I think, on those at the end of last session. We'll talk more about those today. Okay? All right. If you're looking at this, take a minute and tell me what you could tell me about A, B, C, and D, and X. Don't type anything in yet. Just take a minute to think about it. Okay. Does anyone want to type in what A would represent? Does anyone feel they know that? I'm getting new messages. I can't see them now. Okay. Hold it. Did someone say they couldn't find the link? Did I forget to put the link on? That'd be great. Did you just use the same link as last time? Is that how you figured it out?
No, I'm on the text message too, so I just used the one from my phone. But on the Outlook email, I couldn't find the link.
That I might have forgot to put the link. That's not great of me. I'm sorry. Okay. All right, so it's inefficient. If I would say A, that's usually a recession, high unemployment, but not using resources efficiently. For Calvert Hall, it would be if I have 24 seats and only 12 students. All right. B, C, and D represent what? Okay, that is efficiency. Okay, and then X is unattainable with present day resources. And to get to X, you need one of those four shifters we talked about. All right. So A, inefficient, B, D, and C are all equally efficient. And X, unattainable with present day resources. And then increasing opportunity cost because it's bowed out, resources are not easily adaptable. What? And one other. Okay. All right. So what could you tell me looking at this curve about the opportunity cost? Okay, resources are easily adaptable is true. Okay, and the opportunity cost is constant. All right, the resources are easily adaptable, opportunity cost is constant. Okay, great. Okay. And then I wanted to go over two statements, and then I think we'll do some comparative advantage. So positive statement is based on facts. A positive statement is unemployment is 6%. That's a fact. The normative statement, which is more the value judgment, would be unemployment's at 6% due to President Biden's economic policy. All right. The economic policy of President Biden causing the 6% unemployment, that could be argued. The 6% unemployment is a fact. So again, inflation is 4%. That's a fact. Inflation is 4% because the Fed is buying too many bonds. That could be argued. Okay. So again, the normative is more things that the judgments where the positive is facts. All right. Now, I know we went over this at the end of the last class, but again, the absolute is what the producer the most output. So if you're thinking like cars, who could produce the most cars? Who could produce the most computers? Who could produce the most corn? Or the least amount of inputs? Who could use the least land to produce the corn? Who could spend the least amount of hours to make a car? Those would be inputs. All right. Now, the absolute advantage has nothing to do with trade. Comparative advantage is who could produce the cars with the lowest opportunity cost? Who could produce corn with the lowest opportunity cost? And you're always going to specialize and trade the product that you have the lowest opportunity cost. all right? Because if it's the least cost to make cars, I want to make enough cars for my country and then more cars to trade with other countries, but things that cost me more to make. Now, a country can have the absolute advantage in both, but only can have the comparative advantage in one. And then it says, and again, we did talk about this at the end, but I'm just reviewing, countries should trade if they have a relatively low opportunity cost. They should specialize in the good that is cheaper for them to produce. Okay. All right. So let's see, could I move this kind of out of the way for a second? No, no. All right. Right. Yeah. All right. I'm having real severe computer problems. All right. Now, we're only going to use two countries, obviously, and two goods. And obviously, this isn't realistic. And you have pineapples and the radios. Okay. Now, it's how many pineapples and how many radios. So it's an output. Whenever there's an output, we use output equal other over. Okay. Now, what do I mean? If I'm trying to figure out the comparative advantage, I go output equals other. So for Kenya, if I'm trying to figure out their opportunity cost for pineapples, the other is radio over. So 10 over 30. India, if I'm trying to figure out their opportunity cost for radios, for pineapples rather, the other is radios over 40 over 40. All right. Now, the comparative advantage is always who has the lowest opportunity cost. One-third is smaller than one. I know Kenya has the lowest opportunity cost in pineapples. Therefore, India has to have it in radios. You can't have the comparative advantage in both. But for practice, let's look. I'm looking for the opportunity cost for radios. The other pineapples would be 30 over 10. That'd be 3. For India, radios, the other would be pineapples. 40 over 40 would be 1. 1 is smaller than 3. So there. Okay? So that's how you figure out the comparative advantage. The absolute advantage is who can make the most pineapples. India's 40 to 30. India. Radios 40 to 10. India. So India has the absolute advantage in both, but the comparative advantage in radios. Any questions on how I did that so far? You could turn on your speaker or you could type it in, whichever is better for you. Okay. And this is just what I did. Okay. Okay. So we've got Kenya pineapples, India radios. All right. All right. We're not going to get into the good trade yet. Okay. All right. So that's how you could figure out the comparative advantage and the absolute. All right. Now, that was an output problem. Let me just try to erase that and we'll go for an input. All right. That was an output. It was how many pineapples and how many radios. Now, following number of hours it takes to produce one loaf. right? This is an input. We're not seeing how much bread or how much corn we could use. We're seeing how long it takes to produce a loaf of bread or a bushel of corn. For input, it's IOU. Input, other goes under. Okay? All right. And for an input, let's talk absolute advantage first. Remember, absolute advantage is who can make the greatest amount of output or use the least amount of input. So look at questions 1 and 2 and think about it for 30 seconds, and then I'll ask you for the answers for those two. Okay. All right, Jack, you jumped the gun there, but you're right. For bread, neither, right? 4 and 4, neither has the absolute advantage. Who has it for corn? Who has the absolute advantage? What do we got there? I got France. Anything else? All right. Actually, the US has it for corn because it only takes them 2 hours to make a bushel of corn, and it takes France 6. For inputs, you always want to look for absolute advantage for the smaller number because you rather take the least amount of hours to make something. Does that make sense? Okay, that's fine. All right, now I'll work out the absolute advantage for this one with you. All right, now I rather the comparative advantage. Let's see who has the comparative advantage in bread. So I'm looking at bread. The other is corn. It's 2, so I'm going to put it under. That's 4 over 2. And then France, the other is corn. I'm going to put it under. That's 4, 6. All right. I know 4 over 2 is 2, and 4, 6 is less than 1. So France, we're always looking for the smallest opportunity cost, has a comparative advantage in bread, and the United States has it in corn. The United States would specialize in trade corn to France for bread. Okay. Any questions on how to figure these two out before I give you some practice ones?
Wait, so what did you do again to find the comparative advantage?
Okay, let's do corn. I'm going to erase and go other way.
Okay.
And thank you for asking. And thank you for asking. Okay. So I'm going to figure out the opportunity cost first for the United States. So for corn, I'm going to take the other product, which is bread, and I'm going to put it under. It's for an input, it's other under. So that's 2, and I'm going to put the 4 underneath. Okay. France, I'm going to figure out their opportunity cost for corn. I'm going to take the other product bread and put it under. All right. I'm always then figure out who has the comparative advantage. I'm always looking for the smallest number. And that's the United States for corn. And I know France has it for bread because you can't have the comparative advantage in both. That makes sense?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. Anyone else? Okay. All right, let's see what we got next. Okay, we have some practice problems here. All right, what I'm gonna do is, give you guys a couple minutes. And the first thing you want to do is say, is it an input or an output question? The second thing, who has the absolute advantage? The third, who has the comparative advantage? Okay, now they wrote them out like that. I'm just going to show you. I put them like that, like Sarah and Megan haircuts. I put perms and haircuts, and I make my own box. Okay. Now I'm dyslexic, so I have a lot of trouble like not doing it. Or some of you are a lot smarter than me. You could do it in your head, but that's how I do it. So I'm just going to show you that. I'll give you 3-4 minutes, a minute or two on each, fill out each of these, and then we'll go over them together. Um, you tell if they're asking like how many haircuts or how many perms, it would be an output. But if they're asking how to make, how how long it takes to make a perm or a haircut, it would be an input. And we'll go over them. And it's okay to be confused at the beginning with this. Okay. I'm gonna go over these, and again, as we go through them, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to either come on the mic or not. All right, Sarah and Megan. Input or output question? Just type in input or output. What do we got? I got one output, I got an input, I got an output. Okay, it's going to be an output because we're measuring how many haircuts. Okay, so that makes it an output. So therefore, for the absolute advantage, we're looking for the biggest number. So Megan, 2-1, has the absolute advantage in perms, and Megan, 3-2, has the absolute advantage in haircuts. Any questions there? Okay. All right. I'm going to do the comparative advantage just to go over it. It can't hurt us to practice. I'm looking for who has the comparative advantage in terms. Since it's an output is ooh, output equals other over. The other is haircut. I'm going to put over 1. And then here, for Megan, the other is haircut. That's 3/2. I always want the smaller number. 1.5 is smaller than 2. Megan in terms, Sarah in haircuts. Any questions on that one? Okay. Like I said, don't be scared to ask questions. Okay. Justin fixes tires and flats. I think tires and brakes. I think it is flat tires and brakes, right? And it's Justin and Tim here. All right. Input or output question? Type it in. Input or output? Okay. We've got output. Who's got the absolute advantage in flats? Okay, Justin, right? 16-14. And no one has it in breaks 8-8. Okay. Okay. Who has the comparative advantage for flats? I've got a Justin. Anyone else? All right, let's see, is Justin the right answer for the comparative advantage? All right. All right. So again, it's other over. So for Justin, the other is breaks. I'm going to put it over 8/16, which is a half. Okay. And then for Tim, the other is 8. And I'm going to put it over 8/14. 8/14 is more than a half. Justin has it for flats, and Tim's going to have it for. Okay. Is everyone good on that one?
Question: what would have made this question like an input question? Like, what's like the main difference between input and output?
If instead of how many Justin fixes flats and tie and breaks, it would be how many hours does it take Justin to fix a flat and a break?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. And I think we have one of them coming up, I think. And I hate to say this because this is like If I wasn't sure, I'd always guess output. Because if I'm not sure, because 9 out of 10 of the problems are output. So if I wasn't sure, I'd guess output. But I think with practice, as we do it throughout the year, it'll become obvious to you which one it is. Like right now, it isn't. Well, here it is. Hannah takes 30 minutes. What was this? Dishes and vacuuming, I think. So Hannah takes 30 minutes and Kevin takes 30 minutes to do the dishes or vacuum. All right. That makes it an input because it's time. It's not how many dishes can you do or how many rooms can you vacuum. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. All right. So now this becomes tricky. Who has the absolute advantage in dishes? Okay. People are putting in Kevin, and that's true. Okay, that's good. Because for the absolute advantage, we want the smaller number for an input. Okay. And then who has it for vacuuming? Kevin also. And you can have them for both for absolute. Now, it's an input question. So I know it's IOU is other under. So if I'm going to do dishes, the other is going to be vacuums. It's 30 under 60. The half. That's a horrible. And then the other 45, which is a third. Okay. No, a third is a smaller half. Kevin's going to happen in dishes. Now, for practice, I'm going to do the other one. Okay. For vacuums, the other is dishes under, because it's an input. 60 under 30 is 2. For Kevin, the other is dishes. 45 over 15 is 3. I know 2 is a smaller number, and I'm right. Okay. Any questions on this one? Okay, let's erase. There might have been one more.
Are we gonna do that the fourth part of the question where I was asking like who should specialize in what?
Oh, sorry, I forgot that. You're always going to specialize in what you have the comparative advantage in. Okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. And the reason you want to specialize in, because it costs you so little, it costs you less to make. So you want to make more of it, enough for your country and enough to trade it. Thank you for reminding me of that. We'll make sure we do that here. All right, Americans produce. All right, so it's how many computers, and what was the V standing for? TVs. Okay. How many computers and how many TVs? All right. So output or input question, just type it in. All right. It's an output. And Ryan, it's an output because they're asking you how many computers. So that's the output. How many computers or how many TVs? It'd be an input if they said how many workers to make a TV. or how many hours to make a TV. Okay? And don't worry if it's confusing now, after a while, it becomes less confusing when we do it more. Okay? Right. Now, if it's an output, who has the absolute advantage in computers, America or China? I got one America. Anyone else? Okay, America, right. All right. Now, who has the comparative advantage in computers? Okay, we have both China and America. So let's do them then. All right. So it's an output question. So it's output equals other over. For computers, the other is TVs. It's 50 over 50, which is 1. China, the other is TVs. It's 40 over 30, which is 1.3. I always want the smallest opportunity cost, and that's going to be the United States has a comparative advantage in computers. They will specialize in computers. And I then realized China has the comparative advantage in TVs, and they will specialize in TVs. Okay. Some people got the comparative advantage wrong. Do you understand it now? And if not, do you have a question so I could go over it again and clarify it? The other only goes under for input questions. Yeah, okay. And the smaller number, because remembering that the numbers represent opportunity cost. So you always want to make the thing that cost you the least. All right. Any other questions? Good questions. All right. I would say from here, especially, and the next 2, I think we'll end up with 4 of these type classes. That is the foundation of the class. If you really get supply and demand down pat, microeconomics is easy. Okay. So like even the input output questions, and the production possibilities, those are the first 3 chapters. That's like the summer assignment. Obviously, it's good to know it, but really, it doesn't have as much effect on the whole semester as what we're going to start doing now. So demand defined. What is demand? It's the different quantities of goods the consumers are willing and able to buy at different prices. Okay? And demand is a little easier for students to understand because that's what you do. You're a consumer and you buy things. All right? All right. The law of demand is a little different. The law of demand states there's an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded, right? As price goes up, and think of this, like right now, if I said, how many people would want to buy a bottle of Coke for 50 cents, everyone might raise their hand. Then if I said $1, some people might not, then $2, all right? So quantity demanded decreases as price goes up. And obviously it goes the other way. When price goes down, quantity demanded increases, all right? And there's the price and the quantity demanded, smiley faces, having some fun, okay? And this is just what I said before. And I think that's intuitive, right? Price goes down, people like to buy things at cheaper prices. Now, why does the law of demand occur? There are three basic reasons. Okay. One is the substitution effect. And I'm going to talk about all of these in a little more depth in a minute. Second is the income effect, which is tricky because it's not really about income. And the third is the law of diminishing marginal utility. All right. Now let's look at, and let me just leave that if people are trying to jot that down. I went through it pretty quickly. Okay. All right. So substitution effect. Well, if the price of Coke goes up, people tend to go and buy some Pepsi. Not everyone. Like there are people like me who only really want to drink Coke, but a lot of people will. So the substitution effect is if the price goes up for a product, consumers buy less of that product and more of another. And that's why quantity demanded goes down. So if the price of Coke goes up, consumers buy less Coke and more Pepsi, so quantity demanded for Coke goes down. Again, I'll give you a second. Okay. The second one is the income effect. Now, if I have $10 and Coke is $1, I could buy 10 Cokes. But if it goes up to $2, I can only buy 5. So the income effect is about purchasing power. So if the price goes, all right, I put down, but like say, if the price goes down for a product, purchasing power increases. So we could do the reverse. If Coke is $1 and I have 10, I could buy 10 Cokes. If Coke is 50 cents, price goes down, I could buy 20 Cokes. So the income effect isn't about really income, it's about purchasing power. When price goes down, I have more purchasing power, so quantity demanded of Coke would increase. But if price goes up, I have less purchasing power, so quantity demanded would decrease. Okay. And then the third reason is the law of diminishing marginal utility. Now, utility, by the way, always means satisfaction in the economics or benefit. Now, here's what this really means. If I'm dying of thirst, I might spend $3 or $4 for a Coke. The second Coke, I'm not as thirsty, I might spend another $3. But by the time the third Coke, I'm not going to spend $3 because I'm not really thirsty. So the law of diminishing marginal utility is as you consume more units of any good, the satisfaction eventually starts to decrease. And you could think like, I love donuts, but after a while, I've had enough. So I don't want another one. So the three things, the substitution effect, which is I'll buy the other product if price goes up, and I'll buy more of the product if price goes down. The income effect, which is about purchasing power, and the law of diminishing marginal utility are the three reasons that there's an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. Any questions on that? Okay. Okay. So the demand curve is downward sloping. And we've already talked about there's an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. All right. There, if you have cereal, and by the way, this is like when we graph, okay, you could put a P instead of price of cereal, you could just put P, you could put Q, all right? But you're gonna have to have P and Q. And again, if you leave those out, like on the AP exam, you take points off. And I will say, we crushed the FRQs this year on the AP exam. The guys really were great at graphing. So it's these little things. So you have the P and Q, and then you have a downward, I hope this goes, then you have a downward sloping demand curve. Now, the demand curves in real tech now, if you're going to be really technical, are a little curved. If it's easier for you to draw a straight line, draw a straight line. I'm not worried here that you have the exact numbers like 5 = 10. It doesn't, I just want you to know demand is downward sloping, PQ, and you got to put a D for demand curve. You don't have to write the demand out. All right. And I put the demand schedule there just so you know how we get the demand curve. All right. And notice as price goes down, quantity demanded increases. All right. That's the law of demand. Now, these are the things that shift the demand curve. And like the production possibilities curve, the only thing that could shift the curve are these. Okay. So when we say change in demand, everything else is constant except shifters. Okay. And a shifter means at the same price, more people are willing and able to purchase the good. So at $3, if 5 people used to be able to purchase the good, now if there's a shifter, 8 people will be able to purchase the good. Okay? When a curve shifts, we say it's a change in demand, an increase in demand, a shift of demand, not a change in quantity demanded. And I'll explain that more as we get it. Price doesn't shift the curve. Okay. And I'll show you this. No, Jack, when we say demand and quantity demanded, they're different. When we say change in demand, the curve shifts. When we say change in quantity demanded, we slide along the curve. And I'll show you that in a minute. Okay. So if I go from $5 to $4 and I'm going from 10 boxes of cereal, 20, that's a change in quantity demanded. I slid down the curve, okay? Now, cereal makes you smarter. What's going to happen if it came out that cereal made you smarter? What's going to happen to cereal? Are people going to want to buy more or less cereal? More, right? Yeah. All right. So the demand for cereal is going to increase. And when we say that, the curve shifts. And notice at $5, the same price, more people are willing to buy cereal. At every price, more people are willing to buy. And that is a change in demand, okay? Where if I went from $5 to $4, it's only at that price that that's a change in quantity demand. So if I slide up and down the curve, it's a change in quantity demand. When I put my arrow there and I shift the curve, and by the way, there should be, let's see, do I put another D there? That next curve should be, yeah, D1 or D2, all right? So you put an arrow and you have D1 and D2, all right? And notice, even if you go to the demand schedule, at every price, people are willing to buy more. That's a change in demand, an increase in demand, or a shift in demand. Okay. Price didn't change. People just wanted to buy more. Okay. Now, all right, besides that, everyone would want to be more like me. What would happen if cereal caused baldness? What would happen to the demand would go down, okay? All right, and let's look at how that's going to look. All you're going to do now is an arrow, the D2, and you're shifting demand to the left, okay? And again, at every price, at $4, people are buying less. At $3, at every price, people are buying less. Again, that's a change in demand, a decrease in demand. A shift in demand. Okay. Now, what if the price of milk goes up? Does that affect cereal? Are people going to buy more or less milk if the price of milk goes up? Let's just talk milk. More or less milk. What does the law of demand say? Less milk. What do you need for cereal? You need milk, most people, not all people. So it is going to affect. It's going to, if the price of milk goes up, you're going to see a decrease in demand. People don't buy cereal anymore. Okay. I think we should all walk into the supermarket. There is cereal. But if you're not drinking milk with it, it's going to affect. All right. What causes a shift in demand? Here are the only things that could shift the demand curve. One, taste and preference. All right. That was the examples I gave you, like baldness. People don't want to be bald, they're not going to buy it. But people want to be smarter, so they will. That is an example of taste and preference. That's one of the shifters. Two, income. If people are making more money, they're going to buy more products. If they're making less money, they're going to buy less products. So taste and preference, income. Market size. Oh man. You could start out like say as a Maryland like Under Armour. They started out as like a Maryland company. Then they expanded to like the Northeast, then to the United. As the market size increases, the demand for Under Armour increased. Okay. Expectations. If I know the price of cars are going to go up next month, the demand for cars now will increase, right? If I know cars are going to go up in the future, I'll buy a car now. That's expectation. And then related goods, which we'll talk about next time we meet, which is substitutes and complements. I just gave you an example of a complement, milk and cereal. Like one affects the other. The price of milk goes up, people buy less milk, they're going to probably buy less cereal. If price goes down, people buy more milk, they could buy more cereal. These are the only things that shift demand. And I remember them as timer, right? Timer, timer. Taste and preference, income, market size, expectations, related goods. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop us here today. If anyone has any questions about anything we went over, just feel free to ask. Otherwise, you could go. We will meet on the same link, and I'll make sure to send it out to everyone, and the same time next Tuesday. All right. I thank you guys. If you have any questions, just let me know. Ethan, macro looks at how it looks at the combination, like all demand for all the products in the United States, how everything affects the whole country, where micro zooms in on an industry, a product, a market. So micro is more zoomed in and macro is more zoomed out. Yeah, macro is a bigger picture, micro is the small.